Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Mustafa, for this discussion and for the podcast. Always great topics discussed here. So indeed, this DeepSeek topic shaked the market over the last days, and I think like 1 over 2 posts on LinkedIn that I can see are about DeepSeek. So it is definitely one of the hottest tech topics at the moment. If I want to introduce the topic, I would say that around 10 days ago, there is this new model that people start talking about called DeepSeek. It has been published. People start to speak about its benchmarks and so on. And I think we reached a little bit some hype on this news over the last weekend, around the 26th, 27th of January. And what we have seen is that this new model, this new large language model, have provided great benchmarks compared to other large language models like Claude from Anthropic, like Llama from Meta, and of course, the reference one, which is GPT from OpenAI. And we have been seeing that in the benchmark, DeepSeek was competing head-to-head on a certain number of parameters towards the OpenAI O1, and the O1 is the most evolved and the most accurate model that OpenAI have never published. There are other that seems to be in development, but at least on the ones that are available to the public, this was like the reference model. Now, okay, they reached this, so okay, it seems to be a great model, but what was really extremely surprising about this model is that it introduced a technological breakthrough, but also has impacted the markets directly because of a topic around its cost.
It has really challenged these technologies in such a way that they are saying that, hey, if the cost on ChatGPT was like $200 now, they can reduce to $2, something like 10 folds less. So what do you think about that? So
Yes.
In nutshell, are they using the same transformer model, or they are using a different one? Or it's what I heard is they are using a different chips as compared to US chip. Tell us about that.
Very, very important question indeed, because before the impact on the market, we need to understand what is the underlying differences about DeepSeek. And I'll start with the point related to the cost. So when it comes to the cost, the studies or the papers that have been published, they speak about a cost of $6 million to train the model, compared to generally 100 million or tens of millions of dollars, sometimes 100 up to 200 for some models, when it comes to the models that we knew that were initially published in the US, and specifically GPT model. Mm-hmm. So if we bring 100 to 6, it's like a fraction of the cost. We are an order of magnitude in terms of difference. It is almost divided by 13 of the cost, but it is the cost of the training. We still need to check how it works in terms of inference. But indeed, if also for the inference, meaning each time you send a prompt and you get a response, we are also able to reduce that cost, definitely then for 1 million token or for 1,000 token, the price might be divided by 10. And this is actually good news for the companies building applications on top. But for companies that are building foundational models, it introduces an important competition. And that's where things get tricky. And the 6 million were used on hardware that is not the hardware available in the US. So actually, China is under a certain number of sanctions, including the fact that they do not have access to the most evolved NVIDIA GPU chips. I think like just one chip is around $40,000. So this technology is not accessible in China. And there are many stories on this regard. Some say that they used some old stuff, and some they say that there is some second-hand kind of black market that might be there in China that helped get access to this technology. So I can't really, I don't know really what is the real story behind, but they definitely managed to train it on with a lower cost. And this comes with actually a technological breakthrough that they managed to do, which is the reinforcement learning. So you asked the question whether they use transformers. Yes, transformers is part of the process, but they used reinforcement learning on top, and this helped reach almost the same level of accuracy with less time and less cost.
So is it worth to highlighting to our audiences that this whole thing started because US banned those kind of chips? And when we talk about this whole hurrah is all about, not about they come up with something out of the box. No, they start using commodity chips as compared to the very expensive chips. It's chips versus chips. It's not LLM versus LLM. Yes, you are right. They came up with another on top of algorithm, which anybody can do it, right? It's not rocket science, but it is hardware cost versus hardware cost. Am I right to say that?
There is part of it, and actually necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't have access to the last models, and they still wanted to build something, so they relied on what they had, and they actually managed with some technological changes to make it happen. But from technology perspective also, and from algorithmic perspective also, the use of reinforcement learning on top of transformers was not something that has been documented or tried a lot in the past. So using this combination of technology allowed them to make this breakthrough, and required less time and required less chips and less cost to make it work. So how this works in reality is that the reinforcement learning will make the model add, I would say, two main kinds of two main new things. It will automatically add behaviors of self-verification. We have seen that sometimes when we use ChatGPT, it gives us a wrong answer. Maybe it is a hallucination or just a mistake in the reasoning. And when we come back to ChatGPT and we prompt again saying, please check what you answered me, is it correct?
Correct.
They will do ChatGPT will do a re-reasoning, and they will provide the right answer. And then the second part of it is the chain of thought. And actually, the reinforcement learning introduced the chain of thought at the core of the model. Whereas when we have been with ChatGPT, we needed to add those elements into the prompt, especially if you are using GPT 3.5, 4, and 4.0. We generally recommend adding in the prompt, please detail your reasoning or explain your reasoning step by step. And this obliged the model to do that part. O1 is a little bit different because it is capable of reasoning alone, so that was integrated in the model. But what DeepSeek has done with reinforcement learning to improve the accuracy on top of other stuff was to integrate those behaviors with reinforcement learning, which is the self-verification and the chain of thought.
So what is, if I go into a devil's advocate, right? What's stopping OpenAI and Gemini to implement this self-enforcement algorithm on top of that?
I think it will come. I really think it will come. I think it's just that they, I can't tell if they didn't think about it or didn't consider it as a serious thing. The path we were moving ahead, and that's why also we can come maybe later to the crash on the market. The path we were going ahead is that if you increase the computing, your computing power, you increase the accuracy. So this was some of the major assumptions that this DeepSeek story have made wrong. We have been in a situation where we say, feed it with more data, give it more resources, and you will get a better model. And actually what we have started seeing is that we were plateauing in terms of accuracy. We were reaching 80-something%, 90%, depending on the dimension on which we were testing, but we weren't able to go beyond. So the systems were plateauing even if we were providing more computing resources, and working on more computing resources was the main concern or the main objective that the tech industry was following, at least especially in the US. And we have been seeing President Trump announcing $500 billion investment with the Stargate project to get access to higher investment in AI and more resources and so on.
Yeah.
And we have been Microsoft recruiting a chief of nuclear energy to implement nuclear plants to provide power to the big data centers that were needed to train the AI models. And actually all of that with this DeepSeek makes us rethink it and say, maybe there is some call of sobriety, and maybe we can come back to basics, improve the technology, and make it better instead of make it consume more resources. And I will come back to you with very small and old examples, maybe for some of us who has a little bit of number of years on the counter. 20 years ago and 30 years ago, when we were faced with a resource issue on the computing side and where we were working on bare metal machines, we didn't have the possibility to add CPUs. We didn't have the possibility to have VMs and cloud and elastic computing. So you had that machine and you had to make your program work with that machine. So that made us more think about making efficient algorithms than make or use bigger systems. And I think this is more or less a similar case where they didn't have access to that level of computing power, they managed to invent something that makes it need less and still reach the intended objective.
Yeah, so two more questions, right? One, I'll touch bit on the sovereignty of the data across the borders. But before that, privacy, because I made few calls in US and all those people that I asked, why the hell Gemini and OpenAI use the same model. So their answer was that whatever models currently Gemini and ChatGPT is using, they spend years and years so fulfilling regulatory bodies requirements and compliance everything. But if you go towards this DeepSeek, these things are all missing. Can I relate that? And then they say, hey, we cannot simply rely on that because they will bring more leakage and XYZ. So it will not be easy for simply ChatGPT, OpenAI and Gemini to pick up this thing and implement at backend. It won't be possible. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, very, very fair question. I will come back to the how the DeepSeek was built from technological perspective. We discussed about the reinforcement learning, but there is also one important aspect is that they reused models that were existing. It is an open source model built on open source models. And it relied on Llama 3 from Meta, and it relied on Qwen 2 from Alibaba and Tencent. So, and the model is open source. Now, there is a long debate if it's really open source or not really open source, because if it is fully open source, it means also that the test data is available, the validation data is available, and so on. And here we have access to the code, but we don't have access to the test data. So there is indeed part of it that is a mystery, even if we don't we don't know at the end of the day what is within that data. So coming to the privacy topic, if we use something that is kind of black box, indeed, it does add a complexity and it might add a privacy point. To this, I want to share a couple of elements on top. Today in the US, there is a huge deregulation wave. And the regulation on AI in the US is mainly related to an executive order that has been signed by President Biden more than 1 year ago. And it is, I think that with the current administration, there is more deregulation coming. So at the end of the day, I'm not clear at which step we will have a compliance and regulation around AI models. In the EU, on the other side, there is an established EU AI Act, and maybe those models are not compliant. What's second point to be cautious about is that as it is an open source model, you can take it and you can put it in the location that you want. So basically, if you are using Azure Cloud or AWS or GCP, you can host your own instance of DeepSeek, and in that case, you make it run within a secure environment. Would that mean you are 100% safe? I can't really tell. I didn't look into the code. There should be certainly some checks on the code that should be done, that it does not send data, that it does not connect to any remote thing, that there might be some things to check from security perspective, but that removes a good part on the data location that can be mitigated by this kind of setups. And then in terms of regulation more globally, I think that we are anyway moving towards, at least globally, towards more regulation on that. And those models, if they want to survive over time, they will need to get those certifications in place and to comply with those rules.
Yeah, a little bit techie question, right? When we talk about privacy, right, we talk about this firewall kind of concept firewall that it goes in, it checks privacy. That is what makes code a little bit or perform a little bit slower, right? When it becomes slower, you need to add compute. So I think if these guys do not have those privacy code is inside the system, the moment it comes in, maybe it'll become slow down. And last time, if as compared to ChatGPT, they were using from 100 to maybe 10 chips, they might end up using 50 chips or 60 chips. So nobody knows, right?
Right.
So now coming back to this last question, political impacts. How do you
Yes.
see this political impacts because of this? Because what challenges you are seeing politically and with the impact of AI agent as well?
Yeah. So I think politically there is one obvious first impact that that is visible is the US-China kind of competition on AI, and this announcement clearly shows that China is not behind, and it reputs China on the map for this competition at a more strong position. And this actually makes a lot of people or a lot of investors rethink their investments in the US, saying that the US might not end up as the first to be placed for AI. And it's an interesting question indeed. The second impact that we have seen is obviously the impact in the markets. We have seen that on Monday, the Nasdaq has lost around 3%, Nvidia stock has lost around 16%, ASML has lost around, which is the Netherlands chip maker, has lost around 8% in Europe. So we have seen this impact mainly related to chip manufacturers. And why we have seen that? It's because this technological breakthrough shows that you need less chips to build a competitive model. So we have seen this impact, and it should be, I think, a little bit reassessed in the sense that we should compare the training of the model in sort of capex or capital expense. That is something that you do one shot. Even if you do it multiple times, it's still a limited number of times, compared to the inference. Because at the end of the day, you still need the inference, and you still need computing power to do the inference. And the real demand is more driven by the inference on the long run, at least at my opinion, than on the model training, even if the model training are indeed a huge consumer of it. But then on the long run, it's the inference, I think, that counts. And surprisingly, some stocks didn't crash. And Apple stock, for example, did actually took 2 or 3% on that day. And that's interesting, which means that Apple is not considered as an AI company. And whether people download DeepSeek or they download TikTok or they download ChatGPT, at the end of the day, Apple is a winner because they own the Apple Store, right? And DeepSeek was like at one of the highest, or was ranking first on the downloads on the App Store. So there was indeed those impacts that we have that we have seen. Now, going forward, it's difficult to tell. We don't have a crystal ball to look into it. But I think the competition will not slow down. I think the technological breakthrough will not slow down, and it's really exciting time here to see how things are evolving, try those models, understand the different part, look into the tech part, and see the market implications of it.
Yeah. So in nutshell, it is not something which is new. It uses same LLM kind of algorithms as backend models. If you end up creating a Gen AI solution, you will still need vector DB. So it's not eliminating that. Then it is cheaper because they are using commodity hardware, commodity chips. So it's not cheaper because they come up with something out of the world which will really reduce the cost. No, they are using the cheaper chips. Then they are still not sound as far as privacy is concerned. So that's a question mark. Then they currently don't support images, just like ChatGPT support. Then they don't have a live connection as well. They have a historical, just like ChatGPT started with historical data, they are on historical. So what's your take on live and this thing, that image, what do you think? There's two key features, if they
Yes.
are missing, what will be the
Yes.
impact of adoptability of DeepSeek?
Yes, very important question. So there is indeed this historization part, and there is this multimodality, because it does not accept images, it does not accept PDF, it does not accept videos, which is not the case of, at least starting from GPT-4o was actually for omni, meaning that it accepts all kind of inputs. And yes, it is not omni-channel for now. It is not cross-media for now. It does not provide that. But it is important to note that all of those multimodal stuff is a small and rather simple technological component to add. The complexity is at the core of the model. It's not at the input channel of the model. So if I oversimplify stuff, what happens actually when you send a big PDF of 300 pages to ChatGPT, actually it will have some technological capability, not within ChatGPT, but within the interface that you are using, transforming that PDF into chunks of text. If you are using some, let's say, a video clip, or if you, let's start by a sound clip, it will actually do some kind of transcription and some kind of basic understanding of that, not within the core solution GPT, but with some entry kind of SaaS. I have published in the past one article using, for example, how ChatGPT or how LLM can read spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are very complex because it cells and it contains numbers and so on. And actually what you see is that you need some upfront system that will take the data that is on that spreadsheet and put it in some more textual and readable format, and then feed it to the prompt or to the model that you are using. So I think the multimodality is an add-on. It's an important one, but it's more an add-on feature than something that questions the core of the LLM. Regarding the integrations not being live, not doing the history, I have indeed seen these limitations, but again, all of these are things that can be added over time. And the history part can be implemented quite easily by either re-injecting everything that has been shared within the context window, or by doing a basic vector DB that will work just on that session, historizing everything that was in that discussion and using some RAG or other things that can allow to parse it over time, reparse it, reaccess it each time it is needed. So yes, there are limitations today, but there are more limitation on the packaging than in the core itself.
Okay, I think we have touched base most of the things. And again, thank you so much, Ahmed, for taking out time. I think
really appreciated the discussion, and
take care.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Enjoy your day. Bye.
Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.